Hi. You don't know me yet. If you stick around till the end of this video, you'll know me a little bit better than you do right now, because I'm going to share a lot of my training history, the things that I've learned and the things that I've done wrong. And one big catalyst that I think really changed things for the better for me. If you are part of the cycling community at all, if you're interested in structured training, if you're interested in performance-oriented training, racing, bikes of all kinds, you know who TrainerRoad is, and you are probably aware that around the beginning of the year, they released a huge new update to their software to, we'll say, a mixed reception, but generally, I think, overwhelmingly positive, with some, with a minority of, we'll say, very loud criticism. And I've got some thoughts. I'm out walking the dogs here on a very warm March afternoon, and I'm respecting my rest day today. Got a rest day on the calendar, so I'm not riding, even though I would rather be riding. But I'm not. I'm letting my legs rest. And you know, the criticisms really range from the number, the AI FTP number isn't right. It's too low, or it's too high. The workouts are too hard, or they're too easy, or the AI keeps making changes and I don't understand why it's making them. Why does it keep changing my workouts easier or harder? Why is it making the decisions that it's making? Why is it trying to kill me? Why did TrainerRoad create an AI overlord that doesn't make any sense? Why did they create Skynet that's going to take over the world and kill us all? Now, I'm not here to defend their software, but I'm also not here not to defend their software, because I think it does a lot of things well, and I think human beings may not. We tend to stand on tradition to a fault, and I think maybe that's part of the problem with some of what's happening out there. And you know, honestly, over the last several months, it just seems to be like this recurring feeling, or similar thoughts being expressed over time, that there's no trust in the decisions that the AI is making. And here's the thing. I think historically, TrainerRoad has worked pretty well. But I have also been known to criticize their philosophies when I felt like it was due. And historically, I think the right answer has been somewhere in the middle, from their detractors to the company line. And so I have been critical of their philosophy, their training philosophy, when I have felt it was contrary to what I think is accurate, or the best option. And you know, depending on who you are, that may or may not be right. And that's the thing about physiology. It's very complicated, and it's different depending on what your goals are, who you are, who you were born to, your parents, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of nuance to all of this. So from my own perspective, you know, I will use TrainerRoad software when I think it's helpful, and I have no problem creating my own training plan blocks, for instance. And that's something that I've done over several years now, where I will come off of their plan, work on my own goals, and then jump back on when it's the right time. And so I've self-coached that way, and I also have coached others to really good success. So I have a pretty good foundation in what works, what doesn't, and how training blocks are put together around a season. And so what you see is a lot of reviews that are like a couple weeks long, and then they will then extrapolate out from that well, all these problems, and it didn't get my numbers right, and the workouts were this or that, and it's like a couple weeks long, when what you really need is a long-term review of like 6 months or more, and you seldom see that because a lot of YouTube is interested in clicks right away, and they need to get content out really quickly, and so it's not really a fair representation of things, and that's not how training works anyway. And that's the key for people who want a quick fix, is that there isn't one. And any kind of training plan is about consistency. It's about showing up and doing the work day after day. It's not about one workout, and it's not even really about what your FTP number is set at. And that is the secret to all of this. So what I want to do is take my training data. I'm going to show it to you over 2+ years of using the software on and off, show you what happened. I'll literally put it on the screen and we can see it together. And you can see what the truth actually looks like for somebody that has been consistent on a program for a long time. And specifically, I want to touch on a thing that I think catalyzed, in a lot of ways, a turnaround in my training and an understanding of how training works and how adaptions work. At the end of the day, all coaching is somewhat of a trust the process ordeal for people. You do have to have a certain amount of trust in whoever is coaching you, whether it's a human being or a robot. And the question, I guess, is, how do you get there? How do you acquire that trust? Why do you trust the process that you're trusting? And so I think we can kind of look at a lot of that and see what we find. And to be honest, there may not be a satisfactory answer for you at the end of this video. That could be, but maybe there is. So you may want to buckle up, because this video might get a little long. It's not really intended to be short. What it's intended to do is, if you are somebody who cares about training, cares about performance, cares about racing bikes, getting faster, then I think that's important information. And I think as we work through this information together, you can kind of get a better sense of why things are happening, and also to maybe feel a little more comfortable trusting the process, trusting that consistency pays off over time, and that getting mired in tiny little details really in the long run is a net negative to getting faster. So, as I said, buckle your seatbelts, keep your arms inside the vehicle at all times, because we're gonna go, and we're gonna go fast. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of this video, we're gonna go faster than when we got here. So let's go inside, let's sit down, let's open the computer, and let's dissect the last few years of my life, because it's hundreds of hours of riding my bicycle. All right, we're back inside. Made myself some tea, because I can't drink coffee after 3 p.m. or it keeps me up. And good sleep, come to find out, is a pretty important part of maintaining your training calendar. So yeah, for me, it's tea after in the afternoon. We'll go point by point here. We do have to go back a ways in order to understand how I got to where I am. And that journey looks like ramp tests. Ramp tests are probably something that we've all done, and few of us have liked. The thing about ramp tests for me is that I was really good at them. Really good at ramp tests. If you give me a power target, I will do my utmost to hit that power target, and I will bury myself so deep to hit that power target that it really doesn't matter what happens on the other side of that power target. I, over the time, found out that means something. It means something really specific about my physiology. That is not a very good way to set training zones. It's not a very good way to make a plan, a training plan. Just choosing a percentage of it and setting it as your FTP is really not a very good way of setting your FTP. At least it wasn't for me. For some people, it matches pretty closely. But here's where the problem is that we're all a little different when it comes to trying to figure out where your training zones should be. It can cause a lot of problems. What I ended up finding out was that my ramp test results were inflated by something on the order of 10 to 15% over what my actual FTP power would be. I'm not alone in this. I know people that can overdo a ramp test. I know people that underperform in a ramp test, and I know people who swear by the ramp test to set their FTP exactly on the dot. And a watt up or down from it, they swear is too much or too little. What I found was that training was not making me happy. And I didn't really understand why. Because I was wrecked, absolutely wrecked, from training 15% too high all the time. But what happens when you do that is, a week, 2 weeks go by, and you feel pretty strong, but then all of a sudden things start to take a downward turn. And if you're too new to training to understand what's happening, you think it's normal. You think this is just the way things feel, but it gets to a point where the hole gets so deep and you end up wrecked. You end up blowing up essentially and not being able to continue. And so you end up taking breaks, which makes your training inconsistent over the long term. And then you don't see results and you think, well, the plan didn't work. Once I figured out that I have a very strong anaerobic component to my power curve, things started to make sense. The overperforming in a ramp test certainly made sense. That feeling that I have that I can power through for a minute at any power you put in front of me starts to make a lot of sense. And if you don't have that anaerobic component to your physiology, or it's underdeveloped, you probably don't understand what I'm talking about. On the flip side, when I hear people talk about underperforming on a ramp test, it's hard for me to fully appreciate that feeling because I don't personally have it. But I do know people that do, and I do listen when they tell me what it feels like. So I know that at best, a ramp test is an imperfect way to set your FTP and thus your training zones. I recognized that it wasn't really working for me. And then I stumbled. I did a lot of research. I read all of the books. I started at training and racing with a power meter, and I went from there. And I read every single thing I could find. I looked at the literature. I listened to podcasts. I did all the things that a lot of us do when it comes to this topic that we're very passionate about and trying to understand. And that is when I was introduced to more of the long form tests, specifically the Coley-Moore test that I still swear by in terms of feeling out FTP. I think it's a perfect way for somebody that has no preconceived understanding or notion of what a threshold effort feels like to go out and ride and feel their body respond to harder efforts. And so I do think it is the perfect way of doing that, feeling it out and learning it, and then being able to recognize it when you're on the cusp of it or just past it. And you get good at it. You do it long enough, and you really can feel it out almost instantly when you hit that threshold point. And that's the thing about it, is day to day that the power you're able to put out changes. So it's an ever moving target anyway. I found the Collymore long form test, started to use it in my training, and what I found was that it is a brutally honest assessment of where you're at. If we take nothing away from the discussion here today, other than the fact that a lot of us are continually lying to ourselves, then that, I think, is an important takeaway. Your power numbers don't lie. They are what they are. But our perception of them can lie. We can lie to ourselves. We like to see the numbers go up, and when they go down, we start to feel as if something has been taken away from us. Well, this is a very common psychological thing. Did the Collymore test. I did it a couple times to make sure that the number was right, because when you see the number go down, right, you don't want to believe it. And so I did it a couple times over different days and had a real a check of my own ego in terms of what power I was actually able to produce over time. And it wasn't pretty, and it took a lot of self-convincing that I should actually lower that number, because I had learned the hard way at that point that having an accurate assessment of where I am, where I was, beats flattering my ego or being able to tell my friends that whatever this number is. And it wasn't even a big number to begin with. So, what little I had to reduce. But I'll tell you that having that dialed in and knowing that feeling wins every single time, because what it does is it creates a very sustainable way of training that allows you to be consistent. And that is the point. The point all along the way, the point of this video, the point of everything that we're talking about is consistency. What allows me to be consistent and stack days on days on days on days. This is the part that I really want people to hear. The software that TrainerRoad released at the beginning of the year, the new update, it's not just an update to the old system. It's not just an update to their old FTP detection software or their workout picker calendar. It's a fundamental rework of the entire system. And as I said before, I don't work for them. I don't have any financial connection to them, other than that I give them money to use the software. They aren't involved in me talking about it in any way. So the things I say are my opinion only, because I don't have any inside knowledge of it. But it's clear, if you're paying attention, that the system as it exists now is not the same system that existed at the end of 2025. It's a fundamental reimagining of how this software interprets your fitness, how it looks at your power curve, and how it then matches your power curve to workouts. So the workout selector and your power curve are different things that get matched up when it's trying to match you up to a workout, to a given workout. The old system was making inferences from your recent workout data, and it worked pretty well. And honestly, at the end of 2025, the AI FTP prediction model was pretty good. After going through all the history of ramp tests and long form tests and all that stuff and all the data that it had for me, it was actually pretty pretty good once it was set. Once you had a good effort that was around a threshold effort for a long enough period of time, it was actually pretty good at gauging progress. This new thing is doing something that I think is far more sophisticated than the old. I think it's building a model of your physiological responses across different, we'll call them power zones, even though it's like it's a spectrum, right? It's not, there are no, zones don't exist. It's taking your power distribution for a given duration, it's plotting it out, every duration, every intensity zone, across every ride you input. So for me, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rides, and activities also on top of that, running, weightlifting, walking, anything you put into it. Anything you allow the model to see, it will in some way react to. It's looking at all of it and it's asking, what does all of this together actually say about your threshold? What does it say about your ability to put out power over time? That is in a lot of ways new. This is new ground we're covering, because I don't know of any other software that has ever approached it in this way and done it against such a large data set. Not only all of that, but they also introduced an FTP predictor that will look at and model out what it predicts your FTP will be in 28 days. And this is the thing that is really causing a lot of people to mistrust the rest of it, which I think is I think it's part of the problem that we're seeing in terms of people's ability to wrap their head around all of this. When it first came out and people saw that the numbers were changing, right? Your FTP numbers were changing. Many people got a different number than they were used to, and they saw it and it either went up, sometimes it went up a lot, sometimes it went down a lot, and either way it swung. People were either concerned that they weren't going to be able to do the workouts that they were going to get, or more often than not, people felt almost betrayed by the software that they had lost watts. They felt like their FTP was being robbed from them. Because this is what people do. This is how people are, and this is how we feel after working so hard for so long. My own FTP went up a non-insignificant amount, but at this point, I've learned to kind of go with it. And so I have a certain amount of built-in trust, I guess, to the process itself, because I've seen it work. And honestly, if you understand the way that it then picks workouts, you can see that it's not actually asking you to do a whole lot more than you're used to. It's just trying to overload you enough to get you to progress. And also, I think that there's an important, at least in my opinion, there's an important thing happening, that is the huge amount of data that it's able to look at and then compare you to may in fact pick up trends that you aren't aware of. And I think this is what's happening with my own. I haven't had any major issues with it. That's not to say that I haven't had it do things that I don't fully understand. And I'm not the only one that I'm involved with their training plan that is using it. Back in December, when I got into the beta, I was sitting at right around a 305 FTP. As soon as the beta came out, everybody got a new number, essentially. Mine went up to 317. And initially, I thought that there was no possible way that that number could be right. I had a lot of doubts. And honestly, I had been pretty deep into prepping for the marathon, half marathon rather, that I just ran. And so I wasn't even fully into my plan. I was doing a lot of running, which makes it pretty difficult for me to then also build FTP. And also there's a bigger fatigue load that's involved around that time. So I thought 317 was pretty ambitious, pretty optimistic. And so kind of went into it skeptical. What I did is lowered my FTP manually to 312. I figured that was sort of like a good halfway point, good compromise with the system. And so I pulled it back to 312 and proceeded on from there. Mainly because, not necessarily because I didn't trust that the system itself could decide a good number, but because I wasn't being fully honest with the system. It doesn't know the things that I don't tell it, and I don't tell it everything. I also think that if you do a lot of running, that it doesn't fully account potentially for the fatigue that is incurred with running, especially really long runs. You know, half marathon, I was running 90-minute long runs. And, you know, you can build up a pretty substantial fatigue level, even doing, you know, moderate tempo runs, whatever. And it doesn't adjust enough sometimes. And again, like I said before with the ramp test thing, you put the numbers in front of me, I'm going to try and hit them because that's my personality. And it's really difficult to be different. So I manually pulled the FTP back to 312 and proceeded from there and did the workouts. And it works that way. It will still, you know, pick workouts for you if you manually lower your FTP. The workouts change from if the number was higher. And what I found almost immediately is that the new system is really, really good at choosing workouts. So it's so good at choosing workouts that by the time I get around to, I think it's the 20th of January, so not quite to the next update, I decide to go ahead and accept that because I think right around there is where they turned off the ability to see the predicted FTP if you don't allow the AI to set your FTP. And I was rolling along with the workout so well, surprisingly well, that I decided to go ahead and let it bump me to the 317 number that it had wanted to, and try it out that way. The fear of workouts being too hard is real. Being anxious about workouts when you see numbers that you're not used to is a very real fear, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety around a week on the calendar. So I got that 317 bump, and I just let the software do its thing, and it has picked workouts that I am skeptical I can do, but the projected probability of me being able to pass them is high enough that I'm able to go into them really confident that it's just a mental it's a mental problem that I have, underestimating my ability to do the work. But the numbers don't lie, and the system itself, the model itself is able to see those trends that I can't see, and I've been able to hit numbers that I've never hit before. I'm hitting PRs all the time right now in this build block. And so, you know, when the next update happened, it was like a week later, and it bumped me to 319, which is pretty modest, except I had just started really training at 317, so, you know, a couple more watts there. And then a few weeks after that, 324. So pretty regular progression. Percentage-wise, it's crazy. Could I hold that power for an hour? I don't know. Probably not. Could I hold it for 45 minutes? On a good day. 30 minutes? Probably. I've never tried. It's a number I've never really trained at before. So do I care to go try to do it for 30 minutes? Not really. What I do know is that I'm holding power for longer at higher numbers than I've ever done it before. And the training is working, and it's allowing me to be consistent. And this is the thing that is the most important thing to me above all else. And that is being able to get on the bike and put out the power day after day after day and do the work in a consistent manner so that I continue to get faster. So let's look at the calendar and look at a few weeks and kind of get a visual on what we've been talking about.
All right, just briefly, I wanted to look at the calendar and actually show some of this data that we've been talking about for quite some time now. You can see that we're in the current, my current week. The Wednesday following my half marathon, I did this VO2 max effort, and we'll say that it was very hard. It was very hard. And honestly, if you look at the data, it might have even tipped just past very hard for me. And the software itself had a prediction level over 50%, which means that it was pretty confident that I would rate that as hard, but of course I did not. I rated it very hard because it was definitely very hard. You can see if you look at that graph there that the cadence drops off after those later intervals, which does show a little bit of struggle happening. So definitely very hard, if not just a little past that. But I think that the prediction level there is really due to the fact that when it looks at my race effort from my half marathon, it doesn't fully appreciate the fatigue level maybe that would be going into that week. And I think that because TrainerRoad is obviously a cycling focused platform, that it doesn't quite work that well if you have a lot of run fatigue, especially long runs. And I don't think it really ever has. You can't fault them too much for focusing on their main discipline, but it would be nice to see better run fatigue detection implemented. You could also see that the week leading into that I was sick, and then sort of recovering as we got into the race weekend. You can see that this threshold workout though was completed fine, and rated it right along with the software, and that threshold 4.1 was really not too bad to complete. So the system is working pretty well and increasing my threshold TTE at this new FTP number. Now, the main reason I wanted to come into the calendar is to go all the way back to before the new update was rolled out and look at how it has gone since. If we go back to December 3rd, we can see that FTP detection of 305, that was under the old system. Looks like that was during a rest week, and then it immediately got me going into long sweet spot workouts. It's a pretty big one here, 6.5, and then this threshold 4.7, rated very hard, but did complete it. Those are over-unders. Those are a weird over-under with little spikies in the middle. That was 2 hours long though. And then, so moving along, all these workouts completed successfully. We get into the new update. You can see I also ran a half marathon on this Sunday, the 18th of January. Tried to take it a little bit easier on that one. I say that, and then, obviously, I'm not very good at taking it easy on anything, so take it with a grain of salt. But you can see that on the 20th, I got that 317 with the new system. I accepted it anyway. I don't remember when the system actually released that for me, but I delayed updating it, and then I finally accepted it on the 20th. And while it did it reduced my overall levels on the threshold. This is ASTA. ASTA is a pretty easy threshold workout, all things considered. If you don't consider ASTA to be a very easy threshold workout, you maybe should want to consider what that means about the level at which you're currently training. But I did rate that one moderate. and the system quickly picked that up and gave me a 5.9 on that Saturday. And then I went and rode outside with friends afterwards to get some interval training in before I went and did a fun ride. This is also a thing that we should probably talk about is inside training is much more structured and ultimately better for your plan and better for your progression than outside generally, unless you have a really good route that you can plan workouts around and ride it consistently. You get a much better training stimulus by doing structured intervals inside, because it's a controlled environment and there's no stopping, and you can keep going instead of stopping at stop signs and all this stuff. So I did that, and then I went and did 2 hours outside with some friends, but it was a very easy, you can see that this is almost recovery level ride, but for 2 hours, so a little bit of fatigue there. And then the system gave me this long sweet spot workout, rated that as hard. These are little tiny, like 1 minute breaks, I think, in this one. Yeah. And so that's pretty consistent, 90 minutes of sweet spot there. And then immediately got a bump to 319, and the system just keeps going. And the thing is, there's a lot of talk about the system continually repeatedly bumping you down to like a 3 level threshold, which isn't really long enough to grow, your time in zone. But it does definitely progress you. You can see that it does this well outside of the 3 range, and depending on how you respond to that, and depending on how aggressive the plan is set to, it will progress you out to longer and longer intervals, especially these over-unders. Like, over-unders can be a little bit shorter than a steady state, 95 to 100% threshold interval would be like a 2x20 or something. So yeah, I mean, I think the system has me pegged pretty good, and for my own, in my own plan, you can see the 324 update here. But I would have just kept my FTP kind of consistent and felt it out over time, and raised it up slowly over time. But I would have never jumped my own number from 305 to 317 immediately and just started working intervals that way. And I think the system has identified that and is really good at consistently giving workouts that it knows you can hit the target powers. And finally, just to wrap up, the one thing I want to just point out is what you don't see in this calendar, and that is missed workouts. You don't see a lot of skipped workouts. Those are usually grayed out, so you don't see those. You don't see huge blocks of missing workouts, right? This is all the way back into September now. So ultimately, what I think this points to, and I think here is some proof to sort of back up this idea, is that this system is really good at making you consistent. It's, if you allow it to be, right? And I definitely am flexible with this. I will change things around. I will change things around when it suits me, and depending on, but I am good at also recognizing and respecting these yellow days for the most part. I say that and then I point to a day that's yellow with 2 workouts on it, but those were both pretty easy. One was a run and one was a bike ride, but both pretty easy. But yeah, you just have to respect the system. You respect the information that it gives you, and then you use a little of your own common sense and your own learning and your own understanding of your body and how you're feeling, and you can make adjustments, you can move things around, but above all, do the workouts and do them consistently, and really strive to have a calendar that doesn't have a lot of gaps and missed days on it.
Okay, this next thing, it's one of my favorite things because it gets down to what's really fundamental about any training system, and that is it's trusting it. This new system, if you're using it, if you've heard anybody talk about it, if you've just listened to me talk about it, you'll hear over and over that it will prescribe workouts that scare you, that you'll look at them and you'll think, no way will I be able to complete that. And then you'll get on your bike, you'll do the watts, it'll be hard, sometimes it'll be very hard, and you'll finish an interval and you'll realize that you just did it, and you get a little rest break and you'll do another one. The model is very good at knowing what you're capable of doing. I don't fully understand how it works other than that it looks at your power chart and kind of knows the amount of power you've done in the past. So it has a pretty good confidence that you'll be able to do what it's asking you to do. And after all, the best predictor of performance is performance itself, right? And I think that's what it's doing. It's just looking at what you've done, what you should be able to do, and mixed in with that is how fresh you are, right? That's how any coach assigns work. But if you look at my data, in the entire time that I've been in the beta program using the new software update, I've completed every single workout it's prescribed to me at the power that it's prescribed, except one. I failed one workout in the entire, whatever it is, 12 weeks or whatever. Nellis wash, I failed. Nellis wash is not that hard of a workout. Honestly, it's 3 sets of 10 minutes. They are over-unders, which I do typically find harder than other types of work. Nellis wash is 95% to 110%, which again is not my favorite kind of over-under even. I much prefer a 90-110. It's the kind of physiology I have. But it's a hard workout in its own right. The reason I failed it is complicated. Maybe it was the power. Maybe it was that I was getting sick. Maybe it was that my fatigue was too high. Maybe it was that I changed the crank length on my bike that day. Went down to a 160 crank to try it out. Quickly figured out by doing some math that requires more torque, more cadence. The cadence has to be higher to maintain the torque to get the power out, all of this stuff. Put the 170s back on my bike a week later, fixed that problem. So there's a myriad of reasons maybe that workout didn't work out exactly as I hoped that it would. But every other workout has been done. It's been completed. It's been done to the prescribed power. And so for me, it's been a really successful base and so far build season. And I think part of this, because the workouts are harder than they were before, obviously, the power's higher. It's really required me to think about the ways in which I prepare for workouts, the sleep that I get. The entire last year has really been an effort to really build a solid plan around sleep. And if you're going to be doing active training as much as a lot of us do, that has got to be high on your priority list. But also because the workouts, the overall kilojoule output is higher now, it really becomes important to start fueling those workouts adequately. And so really having a mindset around proper nutrition around workouts, just like you do in a race, has also really become an important part. And I think all of that put together has really made a big difference. So why trust this thing? Why do I get excited when I think about the potential of something like this, because I think it's genuinely different than the things that have come before it. The thing that many people are missing is that being able to compare your personal physiology against an untold number of others and find patterns is something that you can't do personally, and your coach can't do either, no matter how many people that they've coached in their life. It's really not going to compare to the amount of data that a system like this has. And so putting it at scale has really never been done before. And while it's obviously not perfect yet, I think that they're doing things in a new way. And a lot of that is why people are finding it hard to trust it, especially when there are outliers that are encounter, genuine bugs in the system, things that don't make sense. And the AI model will make decisions that do not make sense. Usually it'll fix itself and to something that will make sense, but sometimes it will do things that you question. I think this is to be expected and generally fine, and doesn't have to mean that you lose faith in it completely, because while they are, I think, doing something genuinely new and with a tremendous amount of potential, there are going to be, speed bumps along the way. And it is going to take time to develop the system further to where it is something where those decisions that may be questionable or don't make sense kind of go away, and it becomes something that's a little more perfect than it is in its current form. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work, because again, consistency is the key to all of this. Something that I want to stress, maybe I can't stress enough, is that obsessing over every little change that happens on your calendar, obsessing over every little question that you have, obsessing over every decision that your training plan makes, just like if you had a relationship with a human coach that was outlining your calendar and they were making changes to it, if you called them every time a change was made and needed to know the excruciating detail, the physiology of why a decision is made, and what it means for you, I don't think you'd have that relationship very long, but you'd also drive yourself crazy. And a lot of people are driving themselves crazy with this new software. The stress that comes along with doubting the system, the stress that comes along with trying to micromanage the calendar is something that will burn you out just as fast as doing your workouts too hard, or overtraining. A training plan that doesn't fit into your life, it isn't actually, it's not a training plan, it's a prison of your own making. Just like any other type of training plan, it has to fit your life. Even world-class human coaches will tell you the same thing. Rigidity kills consistency. And consistency, like we've said, it's the game. I ride all sorts of bikes. My road bike is sitting behind me on the trainer. My gravel bike is sitting behind the camera. My mountain bike is sitting behind that one. My enduro bike is sitting over to the left. I ride all the bikes. I like riding my bike, and I like going out and riding my bike on the weekends. I like going out and riding with friends. All of these things, like cycling is supposed to be a fun thing to do. Performance-oriented cycling is fun for me, but it's not the only way that cycling can be fun. And so if I want to go ride trails on the weekend, I'll do that, and I'll just let the plan adapt itself around that. And I think that's important. I think it's important not to get too wrapped up in all of the nitty gritty details unless you enjoy it. And if you enjoy, that's the thing. A lot of the people that I see responding, getting into the nitty gritty, I don't think actually enjoy it. I think they're stressed out by it, and I think they should just go out and ride their bike and stop stressing, honestly. And this, to me, is one area where the new system does something that genuinely has been blowing my mind. There are days where I will just ride my bike, let it upload to the calendar, and then the model will give me a much clearer picture than I had before of how those unstructured rides then have this cascading effect, this butterfly effect down through the training plan to where it has ultimately an effect on its FTP prediction, on its fatigue detection prediction, all of these things. The way that it then will cascade down and change workouts. And you see this a lot where people will be questioning why a change was made, why the model is, making all the rides easier or all the rides hard or whatever. Because it's looking at it from this grand scope where it can see the things that you're doing and the unstructured rides and the weightlifting that you're doing and the riding on red days and the riding on rest days and all of this stuff that you think is no big deal, but it takes into account everything that it can see. And it makes these sometimes tiny, sometimes rather large changes down through time. And, you do enough of those and you see some big changes start to unfold and you really get a clear picture on how it, at least the model thinks that that's going to affect your long-term consistency. And that's something that I really never thought that much about before seeing it laid out on the calendar. I want to make a recommendation to stop white knuckling your calendar. Let it go a little bit. Relax. Unless you're a pro whose livelihood depends on race results, and maybe even then, just relax a little bit. Your training plan will be okay. Take some of that effort, that energy that you're using to be anxious about it, and read some books. Really study it. Learn the physiology. Pick up a textbook. Look at some literature. Spend the time productively instead of worrying about it. Because at the end of the day, riding your bike is never a bad thing, unless it's a red day, or a rest day, or the day after your half marathon, or you really, really, really feel like doing VO2 max. It usually doesn't go that well though, and you should have just stayed on the couch and read a book. If you're on TrainerRoad, you got a number that surprises you, whether it's too high or too low, I suggest you sit with it, that you give it a beat before you make any decisions about what to do with it. Write it out a little bit, see how the software performs in choosing workouts. Compare it to, if you know what threshold feels like, compare it to what that feels like. And see if you're not able to do the work. And see if you're not able to surprise yourself and gain a new perspective. See if the model is seeing things that you are not capable of seeing. I think that's really what's going on. If you got a number that's lower than you were expecting, it's probably because your time in zone, your TTE, for instance, is low enough that the model wants you to work at a lower number to kind of spread that out a little bit, to make you stronger over a longer duration. That means that your number's going to sting, and you do need to have an honest reflection about an ego number that isn't really serving you. I did that. I lowered my FTP in October of 23. Really a big deduction in my FTP number, and just had to suck it up. And honestly, it's the best thing I've ever done for my training. To me, it is the catalyst from which all of my future gains came from, and it allowed me to recalibrate my understanding of threshold and what it feels like, and to actually begin growing from that point. And from the beginning of my FTP history on TrainerRoad at 191 watts, where I started, to 324, where I'm today, with another bump coming next week, the results speak for themselves to me. It's 2 years of consistent work on the calendar, of putting in the work day after day, being able to maintain that consistency and grow. And I'm not the same rider that I was 2 years ago. All right, that's it. That's all I got. I've been talking for a long time now, and I'm tired. I'm not really used to talking this much to a camera, so I hope it was worth it for you and for me. And as I was talking, I realized that there's probably a lot of ways to expand on a lot of the things that I was talking about, and so there's a whole bunch of potential video ideas that I kind of decided that we could do as I was rambling on and on. If you are interested in any of that, you got to let me know about it, and I'll do my best to put those together. I've been happy to talk about this with you. I am genuinely a nerd. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was telling him that I had sent some tires off for testing, rolling resistance testing, and he just looked at me like with a blank stare, and he's just like, "You are such a nerd." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I am," but you know, I love it. So what are you gonna do? Yeah, you got questions? You can drop them in the comments. If you want to see more of my face, more of me talking, more of Arlo, that's cool. We can make that happen too. Anyway, see ya.
Ready? 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 Okay.